Hey Steam controller fans, you hear about the sequel to your favorite controller that launched a while ago? No, not the Steam Deck. That's not a controller. That's a Nintendo Switch on steroids. I'm talking about this darling lovely right here, the Dualsense Edge. Ever since the Steam Deck launched, everyone's been hooting and hollering for a sequel to the Steam controller, but with all the same functionality as the Steam Deck's built-in controller. You got the bog standard 2 sticks and 16-ish buttons, but the deck has 4 extra physical buttons on the back, a gyroscope, you all know how much I love those, and 2 clickable trackpads that can have a wide catalog of use cases. The level of customization not only puts all other controllers to shame, it even makes its cousin the Steam controller feel inadequate by comparison. If only there was a controller with the same amount of buttons and potential customization as the Steam Deck. WHAM! Enter the DualSense Edge, Sony's answer to the Xbox Elite controller.
But wait, if it's compared to the Xbox Elite controller, why are you comparing?
Because Valve do what they does bestest. They looked into how the DS Edge ticks and gave us full access to all its buttons and features. Those 2 function buttons on the bottom can be fully addressed through Steam's input mapper, as well as other remappers like Rewazd. I think that's about it though. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Both of the paddles, as well as the FN left and right, which are stupid and are only used to adjust the volume or swap button mappings on PS5, can be mapped to anything you want. Right click, left click, Alt F4, whatever. The gyroscope is best in class as well, since it's on par with the original DualSense, which already has the best gyroscope out of any controller on the market. Especially since Valve is upgrading the way Steam Input handles gyro as we speak. It feels great now. Any drifting issues they've had recently have been fixed. It's much more smooth and easier to tune it than it was before. Big round of applause for the developers behind Steam Input. The touchpad can be mapped as well. Gone are the days of it being a glorified select button. It can be a scroll wheel, a quick item menu, a way to toggle the gyroscope, and can be mapped to mouse, I guess, but that didn't really work out like I expected, so maybe skip that last one. Mapping it to mouse for camera movement doesn't feel good like a trackpad should. As you can tell, this thing is basically a great pairing for the Steam Deck. With the exception of the deck's capacitive sticks, this thing has near perfect parity with it. Your control schemes can be ported over almost 1-to-1.
But I'm not done yet!
I love me a controller with trigger stops. Just like the Xbox Elite controller, the Edge also boasts trigger stops. Really handy for games that need all its buttons to be quickfire. Sony even went as far as to upgrade the triggers to Hall effect sensors, just like with Xbox controllers. No drift, and they don't wear out as easily as that stupid pressure-sensitive crap they've been using for 20 years. The only downside to them is that you lose your oh-so-precious adaptive triggers when the short stops are turned on. Like they ever did anything useful. Yet. I think the coolest thing they've done so far was act as a dual-stage trigger in Eternal. The first stage was your gun's primary fire, and the last stage was the alt-fire. You can still get them back though by turning the trigger stops off. If you're sick of hearing me praise this thing already, you might want to leave.
There's more!
Tired of stick drift? Well, they didn't exactly solve that issue, but they did make it easier to replace the sticks in the event that they do inevitably drift. For 20 bucks a friggin' pop. But at least that means it's easier to mod them with Hall effect sticks that don't drift when needing to tear the whole controller apart. I haven't even gotten to the paddles and customizable sticks yet. It comes with 4 back paddles and 2 different styles. Of course, only a maximum of 2 of which can be used at the same time. Very handy for making use of those phalanges hanging under the controller doing bug all. They come in long and domed flavors. The long ones are probably good for people with short fingers, and despite what Sony has said about them, you can put them on the wrong side of the controller. So instead of hugging the handles, they stick out of the bottom. Meanwhile, I didn't think I'd like the half domes at first, but now I can't imagine this controller without them. I can comfortably wrap my fingers around them, and use them for all sorts of extra stuff Steam lets me do with them. Now I can finally do crap like map sprint to the left stick and crouch to the left paddle, because I feel like crouch on left paddle is more natural. The right paddle I've usually got set up as a modifier for the face buttons through Steam. In games like Quake, I usually have ABXY or X circle square triangle to swap weapons. But old boomer shooters like Quake usually have 8 weapons, and I'm not gonna map them to the D-pad because that's too awkward and slow for a game like Quake. So I used to double tap the buttons for a different weapon. But that still felt too slow, so I used the right paddle to turn X through try into new weapons. Holding right paddle and pressing X will get me a different weapon now. I've gone a little further with this idea in Counter-Strike. Holding the right paddle and pressing R2 or any of the D-pad buttons gives me a different action from the default actions I set. I can go from swapping weapons to selecting different grenade types with the click of a paddle. It even comes with extra stick caps, in case you prefer the feeling of the old dome caps from Sony's first 3 controllers, or taller sticks for, precision, I guess? I'm gonna be honest, I really don't care for those. If I want more precision for my aim, I use the frickin' gyroscope. Those stupid stick extensions serve no purpose to me. But if you like them for whatever reason, more power to you, I guess. The last cool thing to mention is the included USB cable and cable lock. If you prefer to play wired but are sick of or afraid of your cable getting yanked out of your controller mid-session, the included cable lock makes sure that thing ain't going nowhere, which is both handy and kinda stupid. What's to prevent the controller from getting torn out of your hands, getting knocked off the counter or table it's on because someone tripped over the cable that's locked into it? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're sick of hearing me choke on Sony's your patience is about to pay off. Here comes the negative rant section of the video. This controller is premium, alright. The $200 price tag certainly reflects that, so of course I wouldn't blame anyone for being hesitant to jump on it. Nobody can afford one after just managing to buy a friggin' PS5. That costs almost half as much as the console was made for. I feel like I've made this point before in another video. Xbox recently dropped the price of their Elite controller, probably to combat the Edge. And to top it off, not only made the Series 2 cheaper, but are also selling a cut-down version without the extra paddles. You can still tack on the extras later. Not only that, they made a friggin' place to make them with custom colors. What's the Edge got? Thing looks like a damn zebra. Despite how featureless Xbox controllers are, Xbox sure knows how to draw a crowd. At least it's prettier to look at than the original DualSense. It feels a little more comfortable too. The thing I hate most about the DualSense is how painful the handles are to me. Gripping them feels like they're giving me arthritis. I don't know what it is about the Edge, but the handles feel slightly more comfortable to hold, which is what made me bear to use it for as long as I have. It doesn't feel as comfortable to use as the Xbox controller though. That thing is still basically king to me.
Hey! No stairway! Denied!
While Sony consistently makes me regret having hands in the first place. The DS4 I like though, and while this isn't the DS4, at least it doesn't murder my hands to hold like its older brother does. The D-pad still sucks from the original DualSense though. It's a little mushy and I tend to hit angles on accident, but with a little focus, it can still pass what I like to call the Hollow Knight test, and the Super Metroid test, but don't ask me to play fighting games on it. I can't DP to save my life, though that's probably because I still suck at playing fighting games on a controller. Need a fight stick for that. Still, 2 out of 3 is a lot more than I can say for the Switch Pro controller. Nintendo, the company that not only invented but also perfected the D-pad, must have been drunk designing this thing.
It stinks!
Now let's talk about the battery life. If you thought the last 2 controllers had poor battery life, this takes the crown for probably the worst battery life of any wireless controller. If you buy this thing, do yourself a favor and splurge on a charging dock, which is like an extra $30 by the way. But I needed it because 1, I didn't want to wear out the USB-C port from leaving it plugged in all the time, and no, the lock doesn't save it from wear. The cable still bends at the connector, and I couldn't tell if it was even charging sometimes. But the dock, I can take it off to game and expect a full charge, and then put it back when I'm done. It makes for a nice place to display it as well, so I know where it is whenever I need it. But it still makes me a little steamed to have to buy one just so I can feel sure that it won't crap out on me in the middle of a session. The Dualsense Edge is fantastic. I have loved exploring the depths of what this controller offers on PC. I might even say that it takes the crown for best PC controller on the market. Controllers like Scuff's PC-focused controller ain't got nothing on the Dualsense Edge. Its features can make almost any game on PC playable from your couch. Even the most complex games could probably be adapted to this thing. But for $200, it's certainly something I think would make most people hesitant before jumping on board. Yes, it's good, but it's hard to tell if it's $200 good. Especially if I need a charging dock just to make consistent use of it. That bumps it up to around $250 after tax, and that's frustrating to think about just to get the full Steam Deck experience into a controller. But it was nice to be able to test it out for you people watching this review, and see if it's worth your money to pick one up. I also hope it gives controller makers ideas of how to improve their own products in the future. Summarizing this controller, it's currently unrivaled, but it's an arm and a leg and maybe a kidney just to invest in one. Also, can we get something like the Wii U Pro controller, please? I want to see more controllers with the sticks on top instead of being on the bottom or cockeyed.